Section 9, Investigation and Return to Service. 473, Introduction. The investigation of fire, which is the last thing concluded before the return to the quarters, primarily includes the preservation of evidence, especially with the arson. Preservation of evidence, in many cases, the overlaps, the overall operations, even in control of the extinguishment. 471, the initial investigation circumstances upon arrival, given the rise of the suspicion of arson, investigators should be called, but the photographs should be taken at the disturbance of the environment beyond with which is caused the extinguishment, with the circumstances to be a point of the arson, suspected devices such as gasoline cans, cotton trails, film trails, candles, oil slit, oak rags, clean fluid, containers, matches, cigarettes should be labeled. The label should indicate the finders and whether they were suspicious items were found. Note that should be taken immediately following the recollection of all the persons present with the arrival, existing two or more separate fires simultaneously, color, aroma, and smoke, color, and the flame, and where they were issuing the record of the shot. It would be also made whether the doors unlocked with the inside or outside condition of the contents, of whether the disarranged or removal of the nature of the burning material, the direction of the wind, the humidity of the temperature, general weather condition, direction of the spread of the obstruction, extent with the windows of the room where the fire was believed to have been started, whether the passerby may have the scene of the arsonist, making arrangements inside, and any other relevant facts. Note. Notes, sketches in between the scenes of the facts of fresh may be used. Facts or fresh may be used to reconstruct the details of that which may be significant entire of the picture of the takes from form. The facts may be reconstructed, requested during the board of inquiry for the investigation procedure, even if the category, if the arsonist is caught in brought to trial. If the investigation officers have not arrived before the firefighters must return to the station, military policy should be posted to preserve the evidence. They should be instructed to disclose no opinion about the fire and its origin, any facts on which may have been discovered as to the cause, except for the proper authorities. If the fire is involved with the building in which the store is classified documents, equipment such as reels, films, model drawing files, and similar items, if the officer in charge of the fire should be request that adequate guard may be posted over the areas where the items are gathered until they can be removed to more secure locations, since the firefighters are not authorized to examine classification materials, and men should be cautioned to the extremely conscientious consciousness of attentive to the handling of such items when sorting them from the debris to get outside of the designated local promptly. The point is to trust bequeath there have extremely careless of the unnecessary the destruction instances, also known as the firefighters have been taken time after the entire fire was extinguished to unroll the reels and confidentially fill to see if they have contained everything interesting the firefightings were causing the censored and even investigated according to the degree of importance of the material involved. Before returning to the station, the chief and the in charge of it should obtain all the facts necessary for the written up with the required for the fire report. The report includes the type of alarm, location of the fire, the building number, the description, origin, cause, confinement of the fire, the degree, the agents used, the time of the required, the name of the number of the personnel, mileage traveled, weather remarks, and other necessary data. 475, determining the origin of fire. When the fire has the serious that it is when the loss of life, extensive property damage, assistance to the investigation may be obtained with the fire marshal, other authorized representatives, higher headquarters, so that an important viewpoint may be expressed in any later board of the inquiry, board of investigation proceedings. In such case, the investigation authority would attempt to collect much detailed information which may be required ordinarily. The investigation may include such matters as reason for the possible delay and alarm, the extensive spread of the fire, for the heavy loose, for the inability of the occupants to escape. It might be considered the firefighting, the methods employed, the adequacy for the water supply, whether the recommendation was been previously made with the corrective deficiencies that which may have been caused the fire, delayed the alarm, impeded with the extinguishing operation for the average age response. However, the regular fire report form is enough for the record of necessary information, but the question is the form that may be difficult to answer the accurately origin of the fire cause and the estimated damage. B. When there is no eyewitness, the exactness in which the point of the origin of the fire may be determined will depend on most of the cases. The extent of the fire. Will several buildings have been destroyed, it may be possible only to designate only one of them as a place of origin. The same may be true with a number of the rooms that have been gutted by the fire. On the other hand, if the fire has been confined largely on one room, the may be relatively easily determined with the point of origin. This may be indicated with the defective wiring, a wastebasket, a stove, and many other sources. See, in a great many cases, however, the exact point of origin is difficult to determine. The tendency to pronounce the first plausible spot is a probable location in which it started. D. For example, after the fire, which involved a large one-story frame wood shop working, the following facts was disclosed in the brief. Paint cans have been burned out with no trace of rag ashes nearby behind the door with a partially burned pile with the shavings was sweeping the remains of the room. Non-metallic sheet of the ring with the badly burned the holes of the burn through the metal conduity. Both the fuse box and the fuse intact there have heavy sharpening around with the air vent through the roof, and the outside of the wall was burned completely through the outside of the opening against the building with partially burned with the remains of the pile of heavy lumber which have been involved with the fire near the edge of the pile where the burned remains might have been a broom handle. E. Why did the fire start? Judging from the information, it would be impossible to say why the deep of the charring with the wood beams around the ceiling vents and may be indicated with the heat was very intense at this point. It is only what should be expected since the vents provided with a natural flue to draw the heat over the heat and fire. The presence of the paint cans does not necessarily indicate the location of the origin. Even if these cans were empty out of break of the fire, the residue would have to be burned during the course of the fire. The absence of rag ashes does not rule out the possibility of spontaneous ignition. Linseed oil may have been present with the newspaper or other materials, or all of the ashes may have been washed away by hose streams. F. In regard to electrical difficulty, the intensity of heat of the fire could be burned of the insulation non-metallic sheath, the cable along the ceiling, the arcing of the wires which become the bare as a result of the heat would be account for the burn hole in the metal conduity. The absence of the bridge fuses, the overcapacity fuses would not rule out the possibility of electrical difficulties for the fire can start with the frayed wires that overheated with the mount orders without blowing the fuses. In addition, with the electrical glue and the pods, along with the overheating of the other heating of the devices, where the check the possible overheating, but they had apparently been shut off before the first fire started. G. Investigation disclosed one had the building of the scene with noon that day before. Thus, the possibility carelessly disposed the cigarette being thrown in the rubbish pile elsewhere were rejected. Close inspection of the burned surfaces of the outer wall disclosed the fire with the start of the outside of the burned building under the wood pile. The remains of the wood handle found in the pile showed it to be a similar to those of the mops found in the nearby outside rack. All bearing evidence have been used for the mopping of the vegetation. Oil is apparent that the oil soaked up in the mop has been left in the ground of the previous day with the wooden pile on top of it against the frame of the building. A statement of work eventually verified the conclusion that it had been enough time to spontaneously heat the resultant of the outbreak of the next day, and therefore it was still difficult to guess the cause of the fire. After the possible sources were found, considerable eliminated with the proper reasoning due to consideration. Alright, H. Thus, it can be determined that the point of origin may be very helpful to determine the cause, and that do not directly indirectly eliminate the possible causes, although the certain indications point to the greatest concentration of heat, which may be useful locating with the point of origin. This indicates not always inflammable. The prevailing drafts during the fire having a great deal to do with the way of the fire spread, the manner in which the heat is concentrated. With additional, some of the materials are highly restrained, with others slow. Less of the evidence the heat conditions, the lighter and the more flammable substance. Example: the difference resistance and glass and iron. Glass becomes molten and fused with the indicated the temperature had reached a vicinity of 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. Ordinarily unprotected iron supports will be wrapped in slightly over the half of the temperature. It must be kept in mind that the cause of the fire and the point of the outbreak may not always be in the same location. This may occur with the example for the gasoline vapors that carried by the drafts to open the flame or to the arc of the knife switch considerably distance away from the cut. Also happened with the combustible materials at one end of the duct and ignited as a result of the overheated furnace at the other end. The recurrence with the several fires at the same location, presence of the two or more simultaneously fires at different areas of the same building should be used in suspicion. There is a possibility of deliberating, planning, and a more careful investigation warranted. 476. Determining the cause of the fire. After determining the practicable point of the fire's origin, the next step is to determine its cause. It was well association of the cause that considered the first of the most common cause of the fire, such as the careless discard with the cigarettes overheated with the defective stove, fluids, faulty electrical appliances, flags, or sweat marks of welding, cutting. The operation of these eliminated beyond the reasonable doubt with the possible source of the fire through the integration of all persons potentially connected with the fire, maybe through additional light on the subject, such as person person would include those ordinarily occupying the building, those who were present in the time immediately before the discovery of the fire, those who were last at the building, and equating the time who later was near the insubstantiation. Such extensive investigation are only required large fires or those involving the loss of the life that was usually conducted with specially appointed officers of the board. This is assistant with the fire marshal appointed by the aides. Although it is true that approximately 70% of the total fire damage results only with the 10% of all the fires, it does not follow that small fires should not receive careful study. Small fires can teach about the fire protection measure, then if any again, it may be preventing similar occurrences. The most utmost important to determine the source of the fire, particularly with the manner in which it was started. Hence will be the figuring out of the fire report. It's not enough merely to list rubbish, grass, or flammable liquids as the cause of fire. These items are simply examples of combustible material which are most uncommon in the vicinity of many buildings. This causes the strict sense of the agency will bring the combustible materials to the ignition point. And for the example, the point of origin might be rubbish can in the northeast corner of the hangar number 301, dry grass on the west side of the building in number 731. The bucket gasoline near the center of the floor in garage building number 43. The cause of the building fires have been cigarette carelessly discarded with the rubbish sparks with an unprotected incinerator laying in the grass, and the spark of the broken light with the bulb and the unguarded with extended cord socket with the vicinity of the gasoline vapors in the bucket. The type of the vapors, and analyze the lakes of possible decision of whether the new fires are prevented with the regulating the source of the ignition, handling the combustibilities, or both. If it practicable to eliminate the form of strict controls that can be placed from the handling disposable highly combustible materials in foregoing illustrations, so much it happens in both can cause the points of origin are proper subjects to regulation and prohibition. 477. Estimates of loss. Accurate appraisal for the monetary loss resulting from the fire often difficult to make. When a loss is negligible, it will be found advisable to be obtained with the assistance of the possible engineer who qualified to estimate the cost of the necessary repairs. Note that the typical fire report calls not only for the estimate of loss of dollars and also a brief description of the extent of the physical damage the fire chief should make, and such a description decision regarding the replacement of the bracing of the weekend instructions such as joists, walls, and should be made as opposed to engineering photographs are also great help to establishing the extent of structural damage and preserving evidence. Partial loss of Army structural is estimated. The installation personnel charged with the construction responsibility total structural loss of the Army building is value of the structure reported by the most recent inventory of the real property AR report AR 40545 prior to the fire AR 385 fit 12. Been built with the construction cost with either the higher or lower at the time of the estimate. The best of the estimate on the basis of the presence of the cost of the restoration to the original condition. Lost estimates should be made only the personal charge for the construction responsibility totally structural and the valve of the structure with the built and the improvements. Before the estimate can be made with the loss of the contents of inventory, according to the remainder after the fire extinguisher must be taken compared with the previous inventory with the contents, since the loss included the damage of the smoke, heat, water, as well as the sustained actual contact with the flames. It can be accurately appraised only after the salvage value, if any, has been determined if the task is supplied service. And D, vehicle aircraft loss of the determined by the replacement of the kind of partial loss, recorded inventory value less of salvage total loss. Alright, when preparing a preliminary report for the fire chief, is not expected to go into great detail of the loss of the estimate. How he should be guided with the figures given to him about the proper authorities, and the figures are available. The figures are being challenged only if the considerable discrepancy is noted. For example, the itemized loss of the sheet that indicated that the most of the property was destroyed, but the building was known to have contained destruction important objects which the fire person know that the building and did not contain by reason of having made by the inspection just before the fire of the investigation of the debris afterward. The fact should be called to the attention of the proper authorities so that the mistake can be corrected. Other operations action taken. 478. Final action that is the scene of the fire. In the case of the large fires, as well as the ranking of the fire protection officer in charge should be obtain all the information possible before leaving the scene in order to prepare the coherent story for the fire where it is extinguished. Considerable times may be involved with taking the name of the witness, jotting down the significant statements, directing the taking of the photographs, and drawing sketches of the building, location, apparatus, hose lines, and other pertinent facts. The companies not needed to salvage or Overhaul the work should be directed to pick up and the return of the station. Before leaving the scene of the fire protection supervisor should make a double check to ensure that no tools, equipment are missing from the fire apparatus. When the equipment such as the salvage cover the place over the holes in the roof of the been temporarily lent to the occupant with the recipient should be obtained with the instructions given if it is returned. See, even though the fire station is relatively close by, this precaution should be taken for the case of another fire occurs before apparatus getting completely back into the service. When almost entire of the hose of the supply has been used, and frequently advisable in the reloaded hose in the bed of the fire truck, so that others as to be readiness for the instant the case of another fire occurs before the hose can be challenged. All wet and dirty hoses must be replaced. Whether only a few sections have the hose been used, they might be rolled up, stacked, and running the running board, since there would be most probably still be enough hose to be embedded in combat another fire. D. When a crew is returning from the fire, necessity of getting back to the surface quickly does not constitute an emergency. Therefore, sirens should not be used, and all traffic rules should be observed. 479. Return to the quarters. Upon return to the quarters, the crew chief is charged with remote the alarm headquarters. Either is accompanied to back of the surface of that it will be out of the surface temporarily while the hoses are being changed. If the latter is in the case, that should again be notified the headquarters of the company is back in the service. While the fire chief is completely required for the fire reports making the entries of the running of delayed logs journal, and the members of the company either should be making the immediate check of the fire apparatus. Tires should be washed to facilitate the inspection of the cuts and nails and the other damages, fuels, oils, waters, and radiator booster tanks, and should be replenished with the required all equipment in compliance with check for the present condition. After cleaning, dry hoses are replaced with the apparatus bed. Wet and dirty hoses should be thoroughly washed, placed with the rack of dry hoses should be rolled as soon as it is dried in order to avoid deterioration from the heat and sun. Wet salvage covers shall be washed and inspected for the cut and tears. Hung in the dry ladder should be inspected for damage. All tools and appliances will have to become the dirty water. It should be cleaned and dried with the metal surfaces which might rust should be lightly wiped off with oil and entirely approved. Apparatus should be wasted and necessary to remove the decay in mud, dirt, and carbon. When all necessary work follows with the fire has been carried out, the advisable congregated with all the men with the same room to review the method of attack from start to finish. Each of the company crew chief shall explain the operation which the crew was engaged, illustrating the placement of the men and equipment of the blackboard. The purpose of each of the verbal post-mortem is not in critical reimbursement with anyone to take the full advantage for any lessons learned with the fighting with the exclamation B, the exclamation point may be determine whether the operation might be improved with the further fire of similar nature. As obvious mistakes were made with the fire person, and error should readily admit making them, and if the chief is in charge of the ship, but the repetition of the same error will not occur. No particular issue needs to be made, especially if the error is a minor one. Serious mistakes, however, there should not be passed over lightly, merely because the department as a whole was praised. Most of the time, the general public believes the fire department has done an excellent job. Perhaps they're usually true with the bull, but a firefighter normally aware of their own mistakes, and even when the uninitiated layman is not. G. When a private reprimand is necessary to cover the individual case, it should be carried out promptly and returned to the fire before the general discussion is held. When the improvement is a matter of the general performance of duty, the post-mortem session should be followed with the drills and more drills until every man is functioning as an efficient part of the team. On the other hand, the praise of the man of the company for the good job, the exceptional piece of work at a fire, appropriate words of recommendation should be given during the discussion of the presence of the entire group. Chapter 5. Aircraft Fighting and Rescue. Aircraft Firefighting and Rescue.